Hey everybody, and welcome to the first of many Star Trek Discovery reviews. Star Trek Discovery has finally premiered. The long wait is over. And some of you are probably very happy with what you saw. Some of you might be very angry. Some of you might be very confused. I'm personally of the mind of I waited 15 years for this. In some aspects. Just keep in mind, everybody, that this is going to be a spoiler-filled review. Okay? If you guys haven't watched it yet and don't want it to get spoiled for you, then please stop watching. Or check the link in my description right now to watch the Trekyards spoiler-free review. The reason why I'm pointing to that video is that Stuart's initial spoiler-free review after reviewing the show basically sums up how I felt after my first viewing. So if you want a spoiler-free review, please check out the link in the description below. But once again, this is going to have a lot of spoilers, so if you don't want it spoiled, stop watching now. But yeah, let's go on with the review. Yeah, let's do that. So, initial thoughts of the series so far. The first episode 1, A Vulcan Hello. It wasn't bad. The visuals look amazing. And the acting, for the most part, was pretty good. I think they did a very good job with the casting. The intro to the series is pretty interesting, for sure. Not what I was expecting, but the imagery fits the song. Only issue is the ending of the actual song. Personally, I feel like it was just tacked on there. It's basically just the Star Trek theme, to those of you who haven't watched it yet. They just tack on the beginning opening to the Star Trek theme. I don't know. I felt like it was tacked on. But that aside, it was an interesting intro. But it wasn't bad. Yeah. So let's go over what happened in this episode. We're gonna go over a semi-brief synopsis of what went on in this first episode. The USS Shinzo, I can't recall how they pronounced it on the show, is called to the outer reaches of Federation space because a communications satellite stopped transmitting. They discover upon inspection that the satellite was damaged by an unnatural means. They detect an object further in the system, but due to the radiation caused by the binary stars in this system, the ship cannot ascertain what it is. So, with some convincing, the captain agrees to allow First Officer Michael Burnham, to take an EV suit with a thruster pack and check it out. On the object, she finds a Klingon who attacks her. She manages to take him out, but gets sent out into space unconscious. Commander Burnham wakes up on the Shinzo, warns the captain about the pending Klingon threat. A ship decloaks, revealing the Klingons. After recovering, we learn a bit more about the ship and the fact that there are coffins lining the hull. The Klingons send out a signal, presumably to contact for reinforcements, and Burnham consults with Sarek on how to deal with these Klingons. Burnham briefs the captain on what their course of action should be, which is to open fire on the Klingons. She states that the Vulcans learned that showing force before the Klingons do is what worked for them, and suggested that this is what they should do. The captain disagrees, most likely because of Michael's past with the Klingons. Commander Burnham fakes backing down from her position and then pulls a Vulcan nerve pinch on the good old captain. Burnham returns to the bridge and takes command, getting them ready to attack the Klingons. Lieutenant Saru continually questioning her if this is what the captain actually ordered. Obviously, this is not what the captain ordered, but she continues to insist that this is what the captain has ordered. She gives the order to fire, but it gets interrupted by a very quickly recovered captain with a phaser drawn, and Burnham backs down. A fleet of Klingon reinforcements arrive. So that's basically what happened in episode 1 of Star Trek Discovery. Like I said earlier, my initial thoughts of this episode was that it wasn't bad. Watching it a second time, it was still very enjoyable. Getting kind of invested in the story, but there are things that are nitpicky that I have with this. Let's go over some things that I picked up on, and I'm not going to pick up on everything. One of the neat things is that you could hear a ton of very, very familiar sounds all over the ships. I mean, I could hear sound effects being used on the Shenzhou that come from TNG. There were a lot of TNG LCARS sound effects, which were kind of neat. Doesn't belong in the time, but still kind of neat. There were tons of TOS sound effects running in the background as well, which was very much appreciated. Even the Klingons. There was a scene, I can't remember where just now, but I think it was like an alarm or something that was going off. It sounded like a Klingon alarm. So that was pretty neat. So the spacesuit. I mean, it looks awesome. It looks great. And out of all the things that bother me, this is the least important. But it should be important to note that they have stated so many times that this series takes place in the Prime universe. So it needs to make sense. The spacesuit looks more advanced than the 24th century spacesuits from the TNG movies, which is crazy, right? But it looks far more advanced than anything Starfleet has in the late 24th century, which is where the more futuristic Star Trek shows take place. So, this is supposed to take place 10 years before Kirk, and we all know what the Kirk spacesuits look like. So, yeah, I get it. They look like crap, and it was the budget and the time. So, obviously, these ones were going to look a bit more advanced, but they look really more advanced. So, that bothers me a little bit. Another thing that bothered me is Takuvma. Yeah, I mean, the actor is, I guess, trying his very best. I mean, he was acting very well. It's just doesn't he sound like he makes too many pauses and has a bunch of crap in his mouth? It's like his mouth is full of like cotton or something, and he's trying to speak Klingon. It just sounds so freaking weird. I don't know. Let me know if you guys agree, because that really bothered me. Listening to him talk was freaking annoying. One thing that kind of bothered me a little bit is the Vulcan classroom that we see in one of the flashbacks. It looks an awful lot like the Vulcan classrooms that we saw in the 2009 reboot of Star Trek. So there's a tie-in there to the Kelvinverse, not the Prime timeline. But unless I'm mistaken, I don't recall ever seeing those types of classroom in Prime timeline Trek before. If I'm wrong, please let me know in the comments. But yeah, I didn't like that because it's calling to something that isn't canon to me. But that's just me. So what I thought was kind of weird, not necessarily a bad thing, because I don't know what the established canon is for this time period super well, but apparently Klingons have not been seen in 100 years, or there's been very little dealings with Klingons in the last 100 years. You take 100 years off of the current date, which is 2256 for the series, you're in 2156, which is the Enterprise era. If I'm not mistaken, the Enterprise is still in service at this point. So, I thought that was a little kind of weird, but it's not really earth-shattering for me. I can buy that. This bothered me a lot. A Klingon ship with a cloak. Klingons are not supposed to have cloaking tech yet. They get it from the Romulans. They trade technology. The Romulans give them cloaking technology, and the Klingons give them D7s, Klingon D7s. This is why that in the original series in TOS, we saw Klingons on screen. They had a D7, and then we saw Romulans on screen. They also had a D7. This is why, and I can't remember when it happens, but I think it happens 10 to 20 years from the time that this series takes place. So these Klingons aren't supposed to have a cloaking device. Now, I'm sure it can be explained away, and it's something I'll probably accept. There are other species out there with cloaking devices. The Suliban, the Romulans, and that species I can't remember the name for Enterprise that got Trip pregnant. They had a cloaking device of sorts. So who knows? This is supposed to be a ship that separated from the homeworld and went off to do their own thing and be pure Klingons. Maybe they came across one of these species. Maybe they came across one of the ships, and got their hands on a cloaking device and then installed it on this big, massive monstrosity known as the sarcophagus ship. Maybe that's how they got it. But until they explain it, that's a big against canon kind of thing going on right there. And until they explain it, it's going to bother me. Albino Klingon. There's an albino Klingon. Apparently it's a deformity that makes this guy, I believe his name is Vok, a reject, looked down upon. And apparently he doesn't have a house or anything. But T'Kuvma does accept him in the end and makes him the new torchbearer, which I found a little interesting. I'm curious as to what this whole albino Klingon thing is about. We've never seen albino Klingons in Star Trek before. I'm curious. This isn't me ranting on it. I'm actually curious where that's going to go. So I'm looking forward to that. But the biggest thing I had a problem with this episode, the biggest no-no, is the holographic technology that not only the Federation but the Klingons seem to have. This doesn't make sense. I think there's only 1 or 2 episodes of the animated series that are considered canon. So technically this doesn't count, but to some people the entire animated series is canon. So if you're one of those people, then technically holo technology doesn't happen until after TOS is over and well into the animated series, because Scotty sets up a type of holodeck on the Enterprise. I don't believe that the animated series is canon, so that would mean that holographic technology doesn't really exist, at least not to the extent that we're seeing in Discovery, until the 24th century with the introduction of holodecks. So they have these. It's crazy. It's crazy. They shouldn't have this technology, and then they use it for communications. So there are 2 episodes in Star Trek Deep Space Nine where they try to push this thing, where it's like a holographic generator that sits on the bridge or in your office, and whoever you're communicating with, if they have one, they can project a holographic image of themselves to you, so you can speak to them kind of face to face. That doesn't exist until the late 24th century. I don't know. It's really weird. It doesn't belong in this timeline, in this era. It's probably my biggest pet peeve of this episode. Yeah, that bothers me. That's just crazy. But that's it. That was my take on this episode. Those were the things that I think were noteworthy, and I'd like to know what you guys think. Did you watch this episode? Did you like it? Did you come across the stuff that I did? Did it bother you? Did you find it interesting? Let me know. So I don't know. This wasn't what I was expecting. I still don't know if this is Star Trek yet. I know some of you are probably like, shut up, it's Star Trek, quit being a nitpicky nerd. But I am. Star Trek is a very important franchise to me. It's got 50 years of history. It's got 50 years of established canon. And because they said this series takes place in the Prime universe, the original universe, where all that 50 years of history belongs, you got to do shit right, or else you're going to piss some of us off. So I'm a little perturbed, not too much, with how the series is going so far, but it was entertaining. It wasn't a bad pilot. So I'm going to give this this episode a 3 out of 5. So obviously 1 being crap and 5 being great. I'm giving this a 3 out of 5. It was still entertaining, and it does have the potential to be a very good Star Trek series. So, with that, please join me on my next video, which is going to be uploaded very soon after this one, maybe in the next day, covering episode 2, which also aired on the 24th. So we got a 2-parter. And we're going to have a lot of interesting things to go over with that episode. So please check that out. Please like the video if you liked it. Dislike it if you don't. Please subscribe for more content if you want. And don't forget to click on the bell notification icon so that you'll be notified when I upload new reviews and other stuff. Also, please feel free to check out my other videos. Alright, everybody. Thanks so much for watching. Live long and prosper. See you next time.